streamlining from this down to something like this is, well, quite a trick. There are many who would like to know how. But in a structure like this, you can easily trim weight by thousands of tons, by the weight of an ocean liner, in fact, without sacrificing strength, quality, or safety. In an average home, you can cut out dead weight by the tonnage of 5 elephants without sacrificing strength or quality. And this man certainly approves of this weight reduction. He's the one who would otherwise have to hoist those extra elephants of weight onto the walls and ceilings in the form of heavyweight plaster. The secret? The new, well-known pioneer and champion of the lightweight plaster aggregates, vermiculite. Since zonolite brand vermiculite first became available for buildings, the largest sources have been deposits near Libby, Montana, close to the majestic mountain region that we know as Glacier National Park, and the huge deposits in the beautiful Piedmont section in South Carolina near the Smoky Mountains. Vermiculite is a mica mineral. When it comes from the mine, it looks like this. It is made up of infinitely thin layers or laminations, as many as 1 million to an inch, with molecules of water entrapped between. Under intense heat, the molecules of water turn to steam and cause each vermiculite particle to expand like an accordion, up to 15 times its normal size. Each particle is feather light and is fireproof, vermin-proof, and rot-proof. Nature and man have combined to create the ideal aggregate for the best type of interior finish, plaster. And zonolite has almost revolutionized the building industry because of its advantages. A cubic foot of zonolite plaster aggregate weighs around 7 to 8 pounds. But though light in weight, zonolite plaster has all the strength that will be needed and some in reserve. A cubic foot of sand weighs in at around 100 pounds, 12 to 15 times as much. Here are samples of plaster made with sand and with zonolite brand vermiculite. Sand plaster cracks under a sharp blow. Zonolite cushions the blow without shattering. Let's try another test. Driving a nail will chip sand plaster. Zonolite plaster, tough yet not brittle, takes the nail without chipping. In addition to lightweight and strength, one of the biggest advantages of zonolite is its superior resistance to fire. Don't try this with anything but zonolite, but you can apply a blowtorch long enough to melt a piece of copper on top of a handful of the aggregate without hurting your hand. Zonolite will not burn, and it is very slow to conduct heat. Let's compare the fire resistance of a wall of sand plaster with that of a wall made with zonolite. Let's see how some pieces of celluloid would survive with fire on the other side of these two walls. The wall of sand plaster doesn't burn, but it quickly transfers enough heat to burn the celluloid. The wall of zonolite plaster not only does not burn, but shows far greater resistance to heat and protects the next room many times longer. Here are the results of a heat transmission test made by one of the nation's leading fire testing laboratories. Here's what the test showed. Sand plaster and zonolite plaster were exposed to a furnace heat that rose to 1,700 degrees in 1 hour. By that time, the unexposed side of the sand plaster had reached a temperature of 920 degrees. But the unexposed side of the zonolite plaster was only 325. Test after test made by the underwriters' laboratories and other nationally recognized fire testing agencies shows the superior fire resistance of zonolite plaster. Zonolite has obtained fire ratings up to 4 hours, the maximum degree of fire protection required by most building codes. In designing buildings of structural steel, like the new Lever Brothers building in New York, architects and engineers find that fireproofing with zonolite plaster brings important savings in weight and steel. In case of fire, the critical temperature at which structural steel members fail is about 1,000 degrees. To protect columns and obtain the fire ratings required by building codes, architects and engineers have had several methods, including poured concrete. When concrete was used, forms had to be erected around the columns. Then enough concrete was needed not only to fill in the column, but to extend at least 2 inches beyond the outside dimensions. This much is generally required for a 4-hour rating. Zonolite has brought a new and economical method of obtaining a similar rating. Now engineers can specify that columns be surrounded by metal or gypsum lath and covered with zonolite plaster. This method requires less structural steel and no forms. Here is zonolite plaster being applied over metal lath to fireproof a column. While obtaining a 4-hour fire rating, zonolite eliminates as much as 9 out of 10 pounds of dead weight as compared to concrete fireproofing. This saving in weight permits the use of smaller structural members. Here is zonolite plaster being applied over gypsum lath. Either method gives the same results in fire safety and reduction of dead weight. Zonolite plaster also provides a 4-hour fire rating to trusses, girders, beams, and floor and roof constructions. The use of zonolite for fireproofing in the Mid-Wilshire Medical Building in Los Angeles reduced dead weight to such an extent that 25% less structural steel was needed. Zonolite fireproofing in the Prudential Building saved 4,900 tons of dead weight, of which 1,000 tons was structural steel. Zonolite plaster is also being applied where 2 or 2.5-inch solid partitions are used to save space. An outstanding example is in the Cooper George Apartments in Spokane, Washington. Zonolite vermiculite solid partitions with metal or gypsum lath give a strong wall with a fire rating up to 2 hours. Walls of this type have been tested in accordance with standard test procedures and have proved structurally sound. The homeowner who is protected by zonolite knows that he is getting the same material used to fireproof today's multi-million-dollar skyscrapers. He is getting the best type of wall, a plastered wall, and is getting the best and safest plaster protection available. No plaster substitute can give him such protection. The contractor knows that it takes less time and costs him less money to handle zonolite on the job. The men who work with it appreciate that zonolite is clean. There's no cloud of dust or dirt while mixing. It will not irritate the skin or eyes, and you don't need to wear goggles for protection. And how much easier on the back than the heavyweight method. As for the plasterer, why wouldn't he prefer the plaster that weighs so much less? As one plasterer says, zonolite is lots of weight off my shoulders. Zonolite plaster goes on easily. Plasterers say they like the workability of the material and the coverage they get with it. In areas where a machine is being used, zonolite has proved to be the best aggregate. It is non-abrasive. It will not wear out machine parts and cause costly delays in the operation of the equipment. And zonolite can be rodded immediately. Any finish coat ordinarily used may be applied to a zonolite base coat. Here you see a lime putty finish coat being applied. Note the long, easy trowel strokes. The next step is doubling back and filling out to a true, even surface. When this finish has started to set, a final troweling with water produces a hard, durable surface. For the advantages of an all vermiculite plastering job, you can use zonolite finish aggregate. It is a special grade of vermiculite mixed with unfibered gypsum plaster to produce a hard, smooth finish. The finished surface is strong and tough and adds the superior fire safety of vermiculite. For beauty of finish, for opportunities of interior decoration, there is no substitute for walls of plaster. And for the best in plaster, there is no substitute for zonolite. Another important use of vermiculite is as an acoustical material. In homes, large and small, proper sound conditioning makes a big contribution to health, happiness, and comfort. In homes and in public buildings of all types, zonolite acoustical plastic provides excellent sound absorption with the least investment. It is applied by the plasterer, either by hand or by machine. Plasterers are finding this product an excellent source of additional business on all types of jobs. Zonolite acoustical plastic can be applied over any clean, firm, water-resistant surface, such as plaster base coats, masonry, clean concrete slabs, oil-painted surfaces, and so on, and can be applied over flat surfaces or curved. Here you see a smooth finish obtained with a derby or trowel. When desired, a textured finish is obtained with a stipple brush. The material is available in natural tan or off-white and can be painted any color desired. Here is an acoustical material that is an integral part of the interior finish, supplying 65% sound absorption. In this microscopic close-up, you can see why this surface is so effective. Millions of tiny interlaced chambers catch the sound waves and trap them. But in addition to its efficiency as a sound conditioner, this acoustical material is 100% fireproof. It is the only acoustical plaster that carries the underwriter's label. To schools, hospitals, hotels, and other public buildings, fire safety is important. Zonolite acoustical plastic is actually being used as a fireproofing material. For example, let's take two buildings, A and B. Formerly, to obtain a 4-hour rating for a ceiling, a base coat of 7/8 inch of vermiculite plaster and a 1/8 inch finish coat were required. To obtain this rating plus sound conditioning, it required the addition of an acoustical material attached to the ceiling. Today, you can combine that fire rating plus sound conditioning by using a 5/8 inch vermiculite plaster base coat and a 1/2 inch coat of vermiculite acoustical plastic. Here in one ceiling is a 4-hour fire rating plus 65% sound absorption for a cost very little more than fireproofing with no acoustical treatment at all. There are examples of zonolite acoustical plastic jobs everywhere. Davidson College Chapel, Davidson, North Carolina. Wyoming State Office Building, Cheyenne, Wyoming. St. James Church and Rectory, Orlando, Florida. Whitefish Bay School, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hamilton Hospital, Hamilton, New York. And the First Federal Savings and Loan Association Building, Orlando, Florida. In churches like St. Bridget's in Detroit, Michigan, and in many other types of buildings, it lends its sound-absorbing and fireproofing qualities, yet gives a surface that can be painted over to blend in beautifully with the interior design. More and more every day, in descriptions of outstanding new buildings and homes, you find zonolite aggregates in the specifications. Vermiculite has proved its merits in millions of yards of plaster and acoustical plastic in structures throughout the world. It is being used currently in multiple dwellings, such as Grant Village at Syracuse, New York, in commercial structures, such as this attractive new Kroger store in Atlanta, Georgia, or the Austin Savings and Loan Building, Austin, Texas, in churches like Mount Olivet Lutheran Church, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and in civic buildings, such as the new courthouse at Tampa, Florida. In apartment projects like Sussex Hall, Jamaica, New York, zonolite is used in 2-inch solid partitions, contributing strength and fire resistance and helping to add extra usable space. Other examples of zonolite solid partitions are found in the office building of the Toledo, Peoria, and Western Railroad in East Peoria, Illinois, in the Commodore Perry Hotel, Austin, Texas, and many others. In one hotel, this space-saving construction resulted in 25 extra rooms, an increased potential revenue of $30,000 a year. Because of its superior resistance to fire, zonolite plaster is safeguarding public buildings and homes in all parts of the country. It is uniform, quality controlled through zonolite plants, and it can always be counted on for its fireproofing qualities. After a serious fire in a home in Bethel, Maine, the fire chief reported, "We didn't save your home, your plaster did. Any other home plastered with ordinary materials would have been a total loss." In building South Carolina's tallest building, the Cornell Arms Apartments, zonolite fireproofing saved over $30,000 in fireproofing materials alone and eliminated 80 tons of structural steel for an additional saving of $16,000. And not only in large structures everywhere, such as one of New York City's newest office buildings, 260 Madison Avenue, but in homes such as this one in Syracuse, New York, and others of every style and size, zonolite contributes lightweight, strength, safety, and beauty. Zonolite is the only product of its kind, backed by a scientific research and testing laboratory devoted exclusively to the development of better aggregates. Research experts are constantly mixing, plastering, and testing, looking for ways to improve and provide aggregates that will be better and better. Every day, these experts are testing walls of vermiculite plaster, giving them the 3rd degree, comparing them with walls of other type plasters for strength, resilience, resistance to cracking, and other desirable qualities. These men also work constantly with zonolite plants, helping to maintain quality. Each zonolite plant subscribes to Underwriters Laboratories re-examination service for its plaster aggregate. Another zonolite plus that gives the buyer assurance of constant, unvarying quality because the product has passed an impartial inspection. Zonolite is sold by reliable dealers everywhere who stock the plaster aggregate along with other zonolite products. Zonolite plants are located strategically from coast to coast, supplying the building trades in the United States, Canada, and abroad with a plaster aggregate that is always uniform in quality. There is no real substitute for plaster, and for the best of plaster, there is no substitute for zonolite, the lightweight champion.